just for a quick kind of a comical break, in my opinion at least, that when I left the military and was looking at harmonizing the international standards for one of the oil tanking companies that I work for, I came across a pretty interesting example, at least in my perspective. Then we'll be diving into, no pun intended, medical certification, then fitness for duty, and then some best practices and recommendations that you can consider. So does anyone have any recall about this machine? Have they ever had any experience with it? Okay. All right, yeah, so, you know, again, when I was researching about the different state and international regulations for maritime fitness, I came across some really interesting history, at least to me, and one thing that I learned was that sailor fitness has been all the way back to the 1850s when they were doing analysis or root cause investigations of shipwrecks. They realized a fair amount of those were contributed by color blindness for navigation. And so the first medical exam for sailor fitness was really the colorblind test, and it was the only exam. So we've really transitioned from no exam to color vision screening to what we'll be talking about today. So as you know, navigation with lighthouses, light buoys, and light ships are key for navigation, and back then about 1,000 lives were lost per year based on color vision impairment in navigation. And so this is an example of human error and an example of safety sensitive duty that is really kind of it really emboldens the importance of how we designate safety sensitive work and how do we evaluate that we're doing it in a safe manner. So looking at medical certification, this is formal medical guidance that is provided by flag states and international regulations like the US Coast Guard, the International Labor Organization, and the STCW. And really this is the minimum requirement for you to work on a ship. And you'll have a pre-placement exam, and then you'll have a periodic exam. The maximum interval for that exam will be 2 years. And then what happens really is this is a snapshot of that mariner's health status, health and fitness status. And so it doesn't cover changes in the interim between certification periods. So if there's a new illness, new injury, new medication, or a change in the medication, that's not addressed by the medical certification program. Certifying bodies will issue medically certified with limitations or conditions, or not certified. So now we're going to shift to really the concept of fitness for duty. And when I was invited to talk on this particular subject, I had to really dive into really your interest into this topic, because in general, fitness for duty is really the umbrella term or concept that we use to basically make sure that the employee or the worker is well matched to the job demands, and that there's different levels of fitness for duty. And so today we'll be discussing really the nuance between medical certification versus a comprehensive fitness for duty program. So OSHA defines fitness for duty as an individual in a physical, mental, and emotional state which enables the employee to perform the essential tasks of the work assignment in a manner which does not threaten the safety of himself, coworkers, property, or the public. And you can also include the environment in that as well. And so really we're looking at health as being the state of being free from illness and injury, and the physical ability to basically have capacity to perform things, so vision, hearing, strength, and flexibility. When we look at essential tasks, we're looking at the physical demands, exposures, hazards, and geography. So for example, high strength requirements awkward postures, close quarters due to infectious disease, inclement weather, emergency response duties, and the based on geography where advanced medical treatment may not be accessible. Again, looking at safety-sensitive roles, it really is focusing on if this employee does not do their job appropriately and timely, there's a risk to oneself, to the coworkers, to property, or the public. So now we're going to start diving into the nuance between a medical certification versus a fitness for duty program. And so firstly, we'll look at physical abilities, which in general are more stable over time. So if a seafarer is medically certified, it will be unlikely that the ability is significantly diminished over that time period. And therefore, physical abilities lends to a medical certification program. When we look at illnesses and injuries, they tend to be less stable or predictable. We really can't, and this isn't necessarily work-related injuries or illnesses. This is potentially off-duty. And so if a seafarer's medical status changes, whether it be a new injury, a new illness, a change in medication or symptoms, unless they actively report it, this will not be assessed in the medical certification program. So this really lends to having a fitness for duty program with continuing evaluation. Again, as we start looking at the differences between both programs, I'd like to just give some concrete examples to help you kind of anchor your view on the differences. And so under medical certification, it's very accurate and effective of looking at vision, specifically color, visual acuity, depth perception, and visual fields, hearing capacity, functional capacity with regard to strength, range of motion, awkward postures. But regarding new medical conditions, new medications, or a change in symptoms, again, that medical certification program will not address those. So a fitness for duty program is what you'd want to tailor to help address changes in the mariner's status. And so, for instance, say someone is on their vacation or on their personal time, and then they have symptoms concerning of potentially a seizure, or they were diagnosed with blood clots and how did they go to the ER to get them dissolved, or say they had an episode that was concerning for heart disease. Really, those are the types of changes that we would be concerned about in a safety-sensitive role. And as you're probably aware, medication prevalence in our populations is increasing, and so there's a vast array of adverse reactions that prescribed medications can instill into our workforce. So really having a medical review of those medications is really paramount to make sure your workforce is still safe in those safety-sensitive roles. The last set of examples here for medical certification would be vaccination status, and then general medical screening. A lot of times in the clinic, this may not be for the seafarer population, but for other worker populations that I've seen, I may be the first person the first doctor that person's seen in a number of years, and so we'll actually diagnose many new asymptomatic medical conditions that they may not be aware of previously. The most common ones are diabetes, high blood pressure, and then we can also do a heart disease risk score, especially for those that are involved with emergency response. And then again, for a fitness for duty, assessing new symptoms and new injuries are paramount because that can drastically change their fitness for duty status. So some best practices to consider. Obviously medical certification is going to be the foundation to build upon. This is really the minimum requirement to have mariners work on the ships. But ship owners have the prerogative to design a fitness for duty program that will be more stringent than the medical certificate. So really we recommend a collaborative approach with all stakeholders from operations, safety, human resources, legal, and medical to really come together and look at adding additional requirements onto the medical certification exam based on operational experience by your own business specific tasks and exposures. And then another component to consider is a functional capacity evaluation, which is really not a medical program, but once the mariner passes the medical exam, to send them over to a functional capacity evaluation that specifically measures the ability for the mariner to actually do the functions within that job description. So lifting a certain amount of weight within certain ranges of motion, different postures, different components of cardiovascular fitness, things like that. And so this ensures applicants and seafarers have the ability to perform the essential functions safely and consistently. We may have a few minutes, and one thing I was told as well is I can be available for questions after this presentation at the after hours event, or if you'd like to message me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to take your questions there as well.